Chapter 5. A Party at the Quimbys. Saturday morning turned out to be cold and rainy. Beezus wiped the breakfast dishes for her mother and listened to Ramona, who was riding her tricycle around the house singing, "Copycat, Cappycat, Copycat, Cappycat," over and over at the top of her voice because she liked the sound of the words. Beezus and her mother finished the dishes and went into the bedroom to put clean sheets on the beds. "Copycat, Cappycat," droned Ramona's sing-song. "Ramona, why don't you sing something else?" her mother asked at last. "We've been listening to that for a long time." "Okay," agreed Ramona. "I'm going to have a party," she sang. "I'm going to have a party." "Thank you, Ramona. That's better." Mother held one end of a pillow under her chin while she slipped the other end into a fresh case. "You know, that reminds me," she said to Beezus. "What would you like to do to celebrate your birthday next week?" Beezus thought a minute. "Well, I'd like to have Aunt Beatrice over for dinner. She hasn't been here for such a long time, and I'd like to have a birthday cake with pink frosting." Beezus smoothed a fresh sheet over the bed. She almost enjoyed helping Mother when they could talk without Ramona interrupting all the time. The rain beating on the windows and Ramona's happy sing-song made the day seem cozy and peaceful. "All right, that's exactly what we'll do." Mother seemed really pleased with Beezus's suggestions. "It's a long time since we've seen Aunt Beatrice, but of course teachers always have a lot to do when school starts." Beezus noticed that Mother gave a little sigh as she smoothed her side of the sheet. "She'll probably have more time now that the semester's started, and it really isn't long before Thanksgiving and Christmas vacations. We'll see a lot of her then." "Why, Mother misses Aunt Beatrice too," thought Beezus. "I believe she misses her as much as I do, even though she never says so." Leaving Beezus with the new and surprising thought that grown-ups sometimes missed each other, Mother gathered up the sheets and pillowcases that had been removed from the beds and carried them to the basement. While she was downstairs, the telephone rang. "Answer it, will you, Beezus?" Mother called. When Beezus picked up the telephone, a hurried voice said, "This is Mrs. Kemp. Do you mind if I leave Willa Jean when I bring Howie over this afternoon?" "Just a minute, I'll ask Mother." Beezus called down the basement stairs, repeating the question. Why, no, I guess not," Mother replied. "Mother says it's all right," Beezus said into the telephone. "Thank you," said Mrs. Kemp. "Now Howie, stop banging. Have a chance to do some shopping." Well, thought Beezus when she'd hung up, things won't be quiet around here much longer. Howie, who was in Ramona's class at nursery school, was the noisiest little boy she knew, and he and Ramona often quarreled. Willa Jean was at the awkward age, too big to be a baby, not big enough to be out of diapers. "You know," said Mother when she came up from the basement, "I don't remember telling Mrs. Kemp that Howie could come over this afternoon, but maybe I did. I've had so much on my mind lately, trying to get the nursery school rummage sale organized." After an early lunch, Mother decided that there would be enough time to wash everybody's hair before Howie and Willa Jean arrived. She put on her oldest dress, because Ramona always squirmed and got soap all over her. Then she stood Ramona on a chair, made her lean over the kitchen sink, and went to work. Ramona howled, as she always did when her hair was washed. When Mother finished, she rubbed Ramona's hair with a bath towel, turned up the thermostat so the house would be extra warm, and gave Ramona 2 graham crackers to make up for the indignity of having her hair washed. Then Beezus stepped onto the stool and bent over the sink for her turn. After Mother had washed her own hair, and before she went into the bathroom to pin it up in curls, she said to Beezus, "Would you mind getting out the vacuum cleaner and picking up those graham cracker crumbs Ramona spilled on the rug?" Beezus did not mind. She rather liked running the vacuum cleaner if her mother didn't make a regular chore of it. "I'm going to have a party," sang Ramona above the roar of the vacuum cleaner. Then she changed her song. "Here comes the party." Beezus glanced out the window and quickly switched off the vacuum cleaner. 4 small children were coming up the front walk through the rain. A car stopped in front of the house and 3 children climbed out. 2 more were splashing across the street. "Mother," cried Beezus. "Come here, quick! Ramona wasn't pretending." Mother appeared in the living room just as the doorbell rang. One side of her hair was up in pin curls, and the other side hung wet and dripping on the towel around her neck. "Oh, my goodness!" she exclaimed when she understood the situation. "That explains Mrs. Kemp's phone call. Ramona, how could you?" "I wanted to have a party," explained Ramona. "I invited everybody yesterday." The doorbell rang again, this time long and hard. There was the sound of many rubber boots jumping up and down on the porch. "Mother, we can't just have a party with our hair wet." "What else can we do?" Mother sounded desperate. "They are here, and we can't very well send them home. Their mothers have probably planned a shop or something while we look after them." Ramona struggled with the doorknob and managed to open the heavy front door. Mrs. Kemp stopped her car in front of the Quimbys, and Howie and Willa-Jean hopped out. "I'll pick them up at 4, she said gaily. "I'm so glad to have a chance to get out and do some shopping." Mother smiled weakly and looked at all the children on the porch. "Where do you suppose she found them all?" whispered Beezus. "I don't even know some of them." "All right, children," Mother spoke firmly. "Leave your wet boots and raincoats on the porch." "I've got a party," sang Ramona happily. Beezus, who had plenty of experience with Ramona and her boots, knew where she was needed. She started pulling off boots and unbuttoning raincoats. "What on earth should we do with them all on a day like this?" whispered Mother. Beezus grabbed a muddy boot. "Hold still," she said firmly to its owner. "They'll expect refreshments," she said. "I know," sighed Mother. "You'll have to put on your coat and run down to the market. Oh no, you can't go out in this rain with your hair wet." Mother tugged at another boot. "I'll have to see what I can find in the kitchen." Beezus and her mother herded the wiggling, squealing crowd into the front bedroom and went to work removing sweaters, jackets, caps, and mittens. In between, Beezus pulled 3 children out of the closet, dragged one out from under the bed, and snatched her mother's bottle of finest perfume from another one. "All right, everybody out of here," Beezus ordered when the last mitten was removed and her mother had hurried into the kitchen. "We'll go into the living room and do something," she finished lamely. "Ramona, bring some of your toys out of your room." "Bingle bongle bye!" shouted Howie, just to make some noise. "Bingle bongle bye!" The others joined in with great delight. It was such a nice noisy thing to yell. "Bingle bongle bye!" they screamed at the top of their voices as they scampered into the living room. "Bingle bongle bye!" Howie grabbed the vacuum cleaner, turned on the switch, and charged across the room. "I'll suck you up!" he shouted. "I'll suck everybody up in the vacuum cleaner!" "Bingle bongle bye!" shouted the others above the roar of the vacuum cleaner. One little girl began to cry. "I don't want to be sucked up in the vacuum cleaner," she sobbed. Willa-Jean, looking bulgy because of the diapers and plastic pants under her overalls, clung to a chair and wept. Ramona appeared with her arms full of toys, but no one paid any attention to them. The vacuum cleaner was much more fun. "I want to push the vacuum cleaner," screamed Susan, who lived on the next block. Ramona offered Susan her panda bear, but Susan didn't want it. Ramona hit Susan with the panda. "You take my bear," she ordered. "This is my party and you're supposed to do what I say." "I don't want your old bear," answered Susan. Beezus tried to grab the vacuum cleaner, but Howie was too quick for her. The room was getting uncomfortably hot, so Beezus darted to the thermostat to turn down the heat. Then she dashed to the other side of the room and disconnected the vacuum cleaner at the wall. It died with a noisy groan. Suddenly, everyone was quiet, waiting to see what would happen next. "Hey!" protested Howie. "You can't do that!" Beezus frantically tried to think of some way to keep 15 small children busy and out of mischief. At least she thought they were 15. They didn't stand still long enough to be counted. "Where's the party?" one little boy asked. Ramona appeared with more toys and dumped them on the floor. This time she brought a drum. Howie quickly lost interest in the vacuum cleaner and grabbed the drum. Beezus seized the vacuum cleaner and shoved it into the hall closet while Howie began to beat the drum. "I'm leading a parade," he said. "You are not," contradicted Ramona. "This is my party." Susan snatched a pink plastic horn and tooted it. "I'm in the parade too," she said. "I want to be in the parade. I want to be in the parade," cried the others. That was it. They could play parade. Beezus ran to the bedroom and found a whistle and a couple of horns left over from a Halloween party. What else could be used in a parade? Flags, of course. But what could she use for flags? Beezus thought fast. She gathered up 2 yardsticks and several rulers, then she ran to the front bedroom and snatched some of her father's handkerchiefs from a drawer. She had to move fast before the children grew tired of the idea. "I want to be in the parade!" screamed the children. "Mother, help me!" cried Beezus. Somehow Beezus and her mother got father's handkerchiefs tied to sticks and distributed to the children who did not have noisemakers. Howie banged the drum. "Follow me!" he ordered, beginning to march. The others followed, blowing whistles, tooting horns, waving flags. "No!" screamed Ramona, who wanted to boss her own party. "You wanted a party," Mother reminded her. "If your guests want to play parade, you'd better join them." Ramona scowled, but she took a flag and joined the parade rather than be left out entirely at her own party. Playing parade was a wonderful idea. Mother smiled at Beezus. I hope it lasts. So do I, agreed Beezus. Bingo bongo bye, yelled the flag wavers. Howie led the parade, including a sulky Ramona, out of the living room, down the hall, through the kitchen and dining room, and back into the living room again. Willa Jean toddled along at the end of the procession. Beezus was afraid the parade might break up, but all the children seemed delighted with the game. Into the bedroom they marched, in and out again. Beezus opened the basement door. Down the steps Howie led the parade. Willa Jean had to go down the steps backwards on her hands and knees. 3 times around the furnace marched the parade and up the steps again before Willa Jean was halfway down. Beezus opened the door up to the attic. Up the steps marched the parade. Stamp, stamp, stamp went their feet overhead. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Beezus remembered something Ramona had enjoyed when she was still in diapers. She lugged Willa Jean up the basement steps, sat her in the middle of the kitchen floor, and handed her the egg beater. There. Don't step on her, she said to Mother. Oh, thank goodness, sighed Mother. Maybe they'll play parade long enough for us to fix something for them to eat. What'll we give 'em? Asked Beezus. Mother laughed. This is a wonderful chance to get rid of all that applesauce. Let's hurry and get it ready before they get tired of their game. Get the colored paper napkins out of the cupboard and... Oh, dear, what do we do for chairs? They can sit on the floor, suggested Beezus, looking through the cupboard for napkins. I guess they'll have to. Mother took the applesauce out of the refrigerator. If we could put a couple of sheets down for them to sit on, maybe they won't get applesauce on the rug. The parade tramped down the attic stairs and through the kitchen. But Mother, said Beezus, when the drum and horns had disappeared into the basement again, the only napkins I can find are for St. Valentine's Day and Halloween. They won't do. They'll have to, said Mother. Beezus spread 2 sheets in the middle of the living room floor. Then she went into the kitchen to help Mother, who was tearing open 3 boxes of Fig Newtons. It's a good thing I bought these at that sale last week, she muttered. Are we going to give them lemonade or anything to drink? Beezus asked. Not on my living room rug. Mother rapidly spooned applesauce into dishes. Applesauce and Fig Newtons are bad enough. Maybe if we feed them right away, some of them will think the party's over and go home. Beezus piled Fig Newtons onto 2 plates. I hope so. This many small children in the house on a rainy day is too much. The parade stamped across the attic floor again, and Mother had to raise her voice to make herself heard. It sounds as if they're coming through the ceiling. Let's catch them the next time they come through the kitchen and hand out the applesauce, Beezus shouted back. Then maybe we can get them to march into the living room. It was not long before Howie led the parade into the kitchen again. He stopped so suddenly that the children bumped into one another. When do we eat? He demanded. Now! Beezus thrust a dish of applesauce and a spoon into his hands. I want some! Cried the others. Mother handed a second child some applesauce. Forward march! She ordered. Beezus led Howie into the living room, and the rest of the parade followed with their applesauce. You sit here, she said, pointing Howie to a place on the sheet. She was relieved to see the others seat themselves around the edge of the sheet. Quickly she handed around paper napkins. I want one with witches on it, demanded a boy who had a Valentine's napkin. I want one with hearts on it, wailed a girl who had a Halloween napkin. Beezus hastily counted the napkins. Yes, there were enough of each kind to go around. 2 napkins apiece would be safer anyway. She handed each child a second napkin, and they all began to eat their applesauce, except one little girl who didn't like applesauce. Ramona was beaming because refreshments were the most important part of any party, and now at last her guests were behaving the way she wanted them to. Mother came out of the kitchen with the plates of Fig Newtons, which she handed to Beezus. Here, pass these around, she said. I think I'd better help Willa Jean. Willa Jean knew how to eat with a spoon. The trouble was she had to pick up the food with her left hand, put it into the spoon, which she held in her right hand. Then, most of the time, she was able to get it into her mouth. Ramona, her face smiling with happiness, looked at her friends sharing the applesauce. Those cookies are filled with worms! Chopped up worms! She gleefully told everybody. Why, Ramona! Beezus was shocked. They aren't either. They're filled with ground-up figs. You know that. Ramona did not answer. Her mouth was full of Fig Newtons. Beezus passed the plate to a boy named Joey. I don't like worms, he said. I don't like worms, said the next little girl who had applesauce all over her face. Beezus noticed that Ramona was beginning to scowl. When Howie refused a cookie, it was too much for Ramona. You eat that, she shouted. I won't, yelled Howie. You can't make me. Ramona jumped up, spilling her applesauce on the sheet. She thrust a nibbled fig Newton at Howie. "You eat that," she repeated as she stepped into the applesauce. "It's my party and I want you to eat it." Howie knocked the cookie out of her hand. Ramona grabbed a handful of fig Newtons and thrust them at Susan. "Eat these," she shouted. Susan began to cry. "They're full of worms," she sobbed. "I don't like worms." "They're pretend worms," yelled Ramona. "No, they're not," cried Susan. "They're real." "You eat these," Ramona yelled, thrusting her handful of cookies at the children, who backed away. Ramona stamped her feet and screamed. Then she threw the fig Newtons at her guests as hard as she could. "My mother won't let me eat worms," shouted a little boy. Ramona threw herself on the floor and kicked. "Ramona, stop that!" Mother appeared from the kitchen with Willa Jean balanced on one hip. She grabbed Ramona by one arm and tried to drag her to her feet, but Ramona's legs were like rubber. "All right, Howie, forward march," Beezus ordered, hoping to draw attention from Ramona. No one moved. It was much more fun to see what was going to happen to Ramona. "This is my party! They're supposed to eat the refreshments!" Ramona howled, banging her heels on the floor. "Ramona, you're acting like a 2-year-old. You may go to your room and close the door until you can behave yourself," Mother said quietly. Ramona kicked harder to show that she was not going to mind unless she felt like it. "Ramona," said Mother even more quietly, "don't make me count to 10. Gasping with sobs, Ramona got up from the floor and ran into the bedroom, where she slammed the door as hard as she could. "All right, parade," Mother said wearily. "Forward march." Up and down, whistling, banging, tooting, marched the parade. Mother sat Willa Jean down and was just beginning to gather up the dishes and sheets when a car pulled out in front of the house and Mrs. Kemp got out. "Oh, at last," Mother said, hurrying to the door. "I've come for Howie and Willa Jean," said Mrs. Kemp as several other cars stopped in front of the Quimbys. The parade marched into the living room. "I don't want to go home," protested Howie when he saw his mother. "The party must have been a success," Mrs. Kemp observed. "It certainly was." Mother tried to push the uncurled side of her hair behind her ear and to smooth out her rumpled old dress. "I like to play parade," said Howie, "but I didn't like what they had to eat." "Why, Howie!" scolded Mrs. Kemp. "We must remember our manners." Ramona, her face streaked with tears, came out of her room and stood staring unhappily at her departing guests. When the last child had struggled into his boots, she looked tearfully at her mother. "I'm behaving myself now," she said meekly. Her mother dropped warily into a chair. "Ramona, if you wanted a party, why didn't you just ask me to have one?" "Because when I ask you, you don't let me do things," explained Ramona, sniffling. Beezus couldn't help feeling that there was some truth in Ramona's remark. She'd often felt that way herself, especially when she was younger. "Mother, did I do things like Ramona when I was 4? She asked. "You did some of the things Ramona does now," said Mother thoughtfully. "But you were really very different. You were quieter, for one thing." This pleased Beezus. One of the reasons she sometimes disliked Ramona was that she was never quiet when she could manage to be noisy. "Of course, there are some things that all 4-year-olds do," Mother continued. "But even sisters are usually different. Just the way your Aunt Beatrice and I were different when we were girls. I was a bookworm and went to the library 2 or 3 times a week. She was the best hopscotch player and the fastest rope jumper in the neighborhood. She was better at jacks than anybody in our whole school." This surprised Beezus. She'd never thought about her mother and aunt as children before. She tried to picture her school teacher, Aunt, jumping rope and found to her surprise that it was not very hard to do. Of course Mother and Aunt Beatrice must have been very different when they were girls, because they were so different now that they were grown up, and she was glad that they were different. She loved them both. "Did I have tantrums too?" Beezus asked. "Oh, once in a while," said Mother. "I always dreaded cutting your fingernails because you kicked and screamed." Beezus could not help but feel silly. Imagine having a tantrum over a little thing like having her fingernails cut. Then Ramona spoke up. "I don't cry when you cut my fingernails," she boasted. "Yeah, but you scream when you have to have your hair washed," Beezus could not help reminding her. "Ramona," said Mother, "you were a very naughty girl this afternoon. What are we going to do with you?" Ramona stopped sniffling and looked interested. "Lock me in a closet for 1,000,000 years?" she suggested cheerfully. Mother and Beezus exchanged glances. How quickly Ramona recovered. "Make me sleep outside in the rain?" Obviously, Ramona was enjoying herself. "Not let me have anything to eat but carrots?" Mother laughed and looked at Beezus. "I'm afraid all we can do is wait for her to grow up," she said. And when Mother said "we" like that, Beezus almost felt sorry for Ramona, because she would have to wait such a long time to be grown up. Chapter 6. Beezus's Birthday. When Beezus came home from school on the afternoon of her 10th birthday, she felt so far that the day had been perfect. Packages by her plate at breakfast, a new dress to wear to school, the whole class singing happy birthday just for her. But the best part was still to come. Aunt Beatrice was coming for dinner. Beezus could hardly wait to tell her aunt about acting the part of Sacagawea leading Lewis and Clark across the plains to Oregon at a PTA meeting. And of course Aunt Beatrice would bring more presents. Very special presents, because she was Aunt Beatrice's namesake. And at dinner there would be a wonderful, beautiful birthday cake with 10 candles. Mother had probably worked all afternoon baking and decorating the cake, and now had it hidden away in a cupboard. When Mother kissed Beezus, she had said, "I'm sorry, Beezus, but I'll have to ask you to keep Ramona out of the kitchen for a while." "Why?" asked Beezus, thinking her mother was planning a surprise. "So I can bake your birthday cake," Mother explained. "It isn't baked yet?" exclaimed Beezus. "Oh, Mother!" "This has been one of those days where I couldn't seem to get anything done," said Mother. "It was my morning for the nursery school carpool. After I picked up all the children and drove them to nursery school and came home and did the breakfast dishes and made the beds, it was time to pick up the children and take them all home again. And after lunch I started the cake and had just creamed the sugar and butter in the electric mixer when I was called to the telephone. When I came back, what do you think happened?" "What?" asked Beezus, pretty sure Ramona had something to do with it. "Ramona had dropped all the eggs in the house into the batter and had started the mixer." "Shells and all?" asked Beezus, horrified. "Shells and all," said Mother warily. "And so I had to get in the car again and drive to the market and buy more eggs." "Ramona, what did you have to go and do a thing like that for?" Beezus demanded of her little sister, who was playing with her doll Bendix. "To see what would happen," answered Ramona. She doesn't look a bit sorry, thought Beezus crossly. "Spoiling my birthday cake like that." "Don't worry, dear, there's still plenty of time to bake another," said Mother. "If you just keep Ramona out of the kitchen, I can get it into the oven in no time at all." That made Beezus feel better. At least she would have a birthday cake, even if it did mean looking after Ramona for a while. "Read to me," demanded Ramona. "Read about Big Steve." "I'll read to you, but I don't want to read that book," Beezus said, going to the bookcase. She really wanted to read one of her new birthday books called 202 Things to Do on a Rainy Afternoon, but she knew Ramona would insist on a story. "How about Hansel and Gretel?" she asked. Next to stories with lots of noise, Ramona liked stories about witches, goblins, and ogres. "Yeah, I like Hansel and Gretel," agreed Ramona as she climbed on the davenport and sat Bendix beside her. "Okay, I'm ready. Now you can start." Beezus curled up on the other end of the davenport with Grimm's fairy tales. "Once upon a time," she began, and Ramona listened contentedly. When she did not have to make noises like machinery, Beezus really enjoyed reading to Ramona, and this afternoon reading aloud was particularly pleasant, with Mother in the kitchen baking a birthday cake. As Beezus read, she listened to the whir of the mixer and the sound of the eggs being cracked against a bowl. Beezus read about Hansel's leaving a trail of breadcrumbs behind him as he and Gretel went into the woods. She read the part Ramona liked best, about the witches trying to fatten Hansel. Ramona listened wide-eyed until Beezus came to the end of the story, where Gretel pushed the witch into the oven and escaped through the woods with her brother. "That's a good story," said Ramona as she jumped down from the davenport. Surprised that Ramona didn't demand another story, Beezus picked up 202 Things to Do on a Rainy Afternoon and began to read. She was learning how to make a necklace out of beans and pumpkin seeds painted with fingernail polish when a lovely, sweet vanilla fragrance began to fill the house, and Beezus knew her birthday cake was safely in the oven at last. Ramona's unusual silence made Beezus glance up from her book. "Ramona!" she cried when she saw what her little sister was doing. "Stop that, right away!" Ramona was busy pulling graham cracker crumbs out of her pocket of her overalls and sprinkling them across the rug. "I'm leaving Hansel a trail of crumbs through the woods," she said, digging more crumbs out of her pocket. "My father is a poor woodcutter." "Oh, Ramona," said Beezus, but she had to giggle at the picture of father as a poor woodcutter. Ramona sprinkled more crumbs on the rug, and Beezus knew she had to do something about it. "Why don't you pretend you're Gretel?" she suggested, because Gretel would not leave crumbs on the rug. "Okay," agreed Ramona. That was easy, thought Beezus, and went on reading about making a complete set of doll furniture out of old milk cartons. How good her birthday cake smelled! She hoped Mother would remember she'd asked for pink frosting. She heard the oven door open and close. Mother must be peeking into the oven to see how my cake is coming along, she thought. Beezus read on, absorbed in the directions for making a vase out of an old tomato juice can. Something smells funny, she thought as she turned a page. Then she stopped and sniffed. The air was no longer filled with the lovely warm fragrance of a baking cake. It was filled with a horrid rubbery smell. That's funny, thought Beezus. I wonder what it can be. She sniffed again. Maybe somebody was burning trash outside and the smell was coming in through the window. Mother came into the living room from the bedroom. "Beezus, do you smell something rubbery?" she asked anxiously. "Yeah, and it smells awful," said Beezus. Ramona held her nose. Mother sniffed again. "It smells like something is scorching, too." Beezus went into the kitchen, where she found the smell so strong that it made her cough. "Oh, it's worse in here, Mother," she called as she looked to see if anything was burning on the stove. Then Beezus remembered the oven. "Mother," she said in a worried voice, "you don't suppose something's happened to my birthday cake again?" "Of course not," said Mother, coming into the kitchen and opening the window. "What could happen to it?" Just to be sure, Beezus cautiously opened the oven door. "Mother!" she cried, horrified at what she saw. "Look!" Ramona's rubber doll Bendix leaned over the edge of the cake pan, her head and arms buried in the batter. Her dress was scorched to a golden tan. "Oh, Mother!" repeated Beezus. Her birthday cake, her beautiful, fragrant birthday cake, was ruined. "Is the witch done yet?" Ramona asked. "Ramona," began Mother, and stopped. She couldn't think of anything to say. Silently, she turned off the oven and with a potholder pulled out the doll and the remains of the cake. "Ramona Geraldine Quimby!" said Beezus angrily. "You're just plain awful, that's what you are! Just plain awful! Spoiling your own sister's birthday cake!" "You told me to pretend I was Gretel," protested Ramona. "And Gretel pushed the witch into the oven." Beezus looked at the cake and burst into tears. Ramona promptly began to cry, too. This made Beezus even angrier. "You stop crying!" she ordered Ramona furiously. "It was my birthday cake, and I'm the one that's supposed to be crying!" "Girls," said Mother in a tired voice. "Ramona, you've been very naughty. You know better than to put anything in the oven. Now go to your room and stay there until I say you can come out." Sniffling, Ramona started toward the bedroom. "Don't you dare put your toys on my bed!" said Beezus. "Mother, can you fix the cake?" "I'm afraid not." Mother poked at the cake with her finger. "It's fallen, and anyway, it would probably taste like burnt rubber." Beezus tried to brush the tears out of her eyes. "Ramona always spoils everything. And now I don't have a birthday cake, and Aunt Beatrice is coming, and it won't be like a birthday at all." "I know Ramona is a problem, but we'll just have to be patient because she's little," said Mother as she scraped the cake into the garbage can. "And you still will have a cake. I'll phone your Aunt Beatrice and have her bring one from the bakery." "Oh, Mother, will you?" asked Beezus. "That's what I'll do," said Mother. "Now run along and wash your face, and you'll feel better." But as Beezus held her face cloth under the faucet, she was not at all sure she would feel better. For Ramona to spoil one birthday cake was bad enough. But two? Probably nobody else in the whole world had a little sister who spoiled 2 birthday cakes in one day. Beezus scrubbed away her tear stains, feeling more and more sorry for herself for having such a little sister. If Ramona were only bigger, things might be different. But since she was so much younger, she would always be, well, a pest. Then the terrible thought came to Beezus again. The thought that she had the time Ramona bit into all the apples and the time she shoved the dog into the bathroom. She tried not to think the thought, but she couldn't help it. There were times when she just did not love Ramona. This was one of them. Everyone knew sisters were supposed to love each other. Look at how much Mother and Aunt Beatrice loved each other. Beezus felt very gloomy indeed as she dried her face. She was a terrible girl who did not love her little sister, like a wicked sister in a fairy tale. And on her birthday, too, a day that was supposed to be happy. When Beezus went into the living room, Mother switched off the vacuum cleaner, which had been sucking up the crumbs Ramona had sprinkled on the rug. Aunt Beatrice said she would be delighted to bring a cake. She knows a bakery that makes very special birthday cakes, she said, smiling at Beezus. You mustn't let Ramona ruin your birthday. Beezus felt a little better. She curled up on the Davenport again with 202 things to do on a rainy afternoon, and read about making Christmas tree ornaments out of cellophane straws, until she heard her aunt's car pull into the driveway. Then she flung her book aside and ran out to greet her. "Happy birthday, darling!" cried Aunt Beatrice as she set the brake and opened the door of her yellow convertible. Joyfully, Beezus ran over to the car and kissed her aunt. "Did you bring the cake?" "I certainly did," answered Aunt Beatrice. "It's the best birthday cake I could find. And that isn't all I brought. Here, help me carry these packages while I carry the cake. We mustn't let anything happen to this cake." And the way Aunt Beatrice laughed made Beezus laugh too. Her aunt gave her 3 packages, 2 large and 1 small, to carry. "The little package is for Ramona," explained Aunt Beatrice, "so she won't feel left out." Mother came out of the house and hugged her sister. "Hello, Bee," she said. "I'm so glad you could come. What would I ever do without you?" "It's good to see you too, Dorothy," answered Aunt Beatrice. "And what's an aunt for if she can't come to the rescue with a birthday cake once in a while?" As Beezus watched her mother and aunt arm in arm go into the house, she thought about how different they were. Mother so tall and comfortable looking, and Aunt Beatrice so small and gay, and yet how happy they looked together. Smiling, Beezus carried the gifts into the house. Aunt Beatrice always brought such beautiful packages, wrapped in fancy paper and tied with big fluffy bows. Aunt Beatrice handed the cake box to Mother. "Be sure to put it in a safe place," she said, and laughed again. "May I open the packages now?" Beezus asked eagerly, although she felt it was almost too bad to untie such beautiful bows. "Of course you may," answered Aunt Beatrice. "Where's Ramona?" A subdued Ramona came out of the bedroom to receive her present. She tore off the wrapping, but Beezus painstakingly untied the ribbon on one of her presents and removed the paper carefully so she wouldn't tear it. Her new book, 202 Things to Do on a Rainy Afternoon, suggested pasting pretty paper on a gallon ice cream carton to make a wastebasket. "Oh, Aunt Beatrice!" exclaimed Beezus as she opened up her first package. It was a real grown-up sewing box. It had 2 sizes of scissors, a fat red pincushion that looked like a tomato, an emery bag that looked like a ripe strawberry, and a tape measure that pulled out of a shiny box. When Beezus pushed the button on the box, the tape measure snapped back inside. The box also had needles, pins, and a thimble. Beezus never wore a thimble, but she thought it would be nice to have one in case she ever wanted to use one. "Oh, Aunt Beatrice," she said. "It's the most beautiful sewing box in the whole world. I'll make you 2 potholders for Christmas." Then, as Aunt Beatrice laughed, Beezus clapped her hand over her mouth. The potholder was supposed to be a surprise. Ramona had unwrapped a little steam shovel made of red and yellow plastic, which she was now pushing happily around the rug. Breathlessly, Beezus lifted the lid off the second box. "Oh, Aunt Beatrice!" she exclaimed, as she lifted out a dress that was a lovely shade of blue. "It's just the right shade of blue to match your eyes," explained Aunt Beatrice. "Is it really?" asked Beezus, delighted that her pretty young aunt liked her blue eyes. She was about to tell her about being Sacagawea for the PTA when Father came home from work, and before long dinner was on the table. Mother lit the candles and turned off the dining room light. "How beautiful everything looks," Beezus thought. "I wish we had candles on the table every night." After Father had served the chicken and mashed potatoes and peas, and Mother had passed the hot rolls, Beezus decided the time had come to tell Aunt Beatrice about being Sacagawea. "Do you know what I did last week?" she began. "I want some jelly," said Ramona. "You mean, please pass the jelly," corrected Mother, while Beezus waited patiently. "No, what did you do last week?" asked Aunt Beatrice. "Well, last week Beezus began again. "I like purple jelly better than red jelly," said Ramona. "Ramona, stop interrupting your sister," said Father. "Well, I do like purple jelly better than red jelly," insisted Ramona. "Never mind," said Mother. "Go on, Beezus." "Last week," said Beezus, looking at her aunt, who smiled as if she understood. Excuse me, Beezus, Mother cut in. Ramona, we do not put jelly on our mashed potatoes. I like jelly on my mashed potatoes. Ramona stirred potato and jelly around with her fork. Ramona, you heard what your mother said. Father looked stern. If I can put butter on my mashed potatoes, why can't I put jelly? I put butter and jelly on toast, said Ramona. Father couldn't help but laugh. That's a hard question to answer. But Mother, Beezus began. I like jelly on my mashed potatoes, interrupted Ramona, looking sulky. You can't have jelly on your mashed potatoes because you aren't supposed to, said Beezus crossly, forgetting Sacagawea for the moment. That's as good an answer as any, agreed Father. There are some things we don't do because we're not supposed to. Ramona looked even more sulky. Where is my merry sunshine? Asked Mother. Ramona scowled. I am too a merry sunshine, she shouted angrily. Ramona, said Mother quietly, you may have to go to your room until you can behave yourself. And serves you right, too, thought Beezus. I am too a merry sunshine, insisted Ramona, but she got down from the table and ran out of the room. Everyone was silent for a moment. Beezus, what were you trying to tell me? Aunt Beatrice asked. And finally Beezus got to tell about leading Lewis and Clark to Oregon with a doll tied to Mother's breadboard for a papoose, and how her mother told her what a clever girl she was to think of using a breadboard for a papoose board. Somehow she did not feel the same way telling the story after Ramona's interruptions. Being Sacagawea for the PTA didn't seem very important now. No matter what she did, Ramona always managed to spoil it. Unhappily, Beezus went on eating her chicken and peas. It was another one of those terrible times when she just didn't love her sister. You mustn't let Ramona get you down, whispered Mother. Beezus did not answer. What a terrible girl she was to not love her little sister. How shocked and surprised Mother would be if she knew. Beezus, you look as if something is bothering you, remarked Aunt Beatrice. Beezus looked down at her plate. How could she ever tell such an awful thing? Why don't you tell us what's wrong? Aunt Beatrice suggested. Perhaps we could help. She sounded so interested and so understanding that Beezus discovered she really wanted to tell her what was on her mind. Sometimes I just don't love Ramona, she blurted out, to get it over with. There, she'd said it right out loud, and on her birthday, too. Now everyone would know what a terrible girl she was. My goodness, is that all that's bothering you? Mother sounded surprised. Beatrice nodded miserably. Why, there's no reason why you should love Ramona all the time, Mother went on. After all, there are probably lots of times when she doesn't love you. Now it was Beezus's turn to be surprised. Surprised and relieved at the same time. She wondered why she hadn't thought of it that way before. Aunt Beatrice smiled. Dorothy, she said to Mother, do you remember the time that She began to laugh so hard she couldn't finish the sentence. You took my doll with the beautiful yellow curls and dyed her hair with black shoe dye? Finished Mother, and the two grown-up sisters went into gales of laughter. I didn't love you one bit that time, admitted Mother. I was mad at you for days. And you were always so bossy because you were older, said Aunt Beatrice. I'm sure I didn't love you at all when you were supposed to take me to school and made me walk about 6 feet behind you because you didn't want people to know you had to look after me. Mother! Exclaimed Beezus in shocked delight. Did I do that? Laughed Mother. I'd forgotten all about it. What else did Mother do? Beezus asked eagerly. She was terribly fussy, said Aunt Beatrice. We had to share a room and she used to get mad because I was untidy. Once she threw all my paper dolls in the wastebasket because I left them on her side of the dresser. That was another time we didn't love each other. Fascinated, Beezus hoped this interesting conversation would continue. Imagine Mother and Aunt Beatrice quarreling. Oh, but the worst thing of all, said Mother. Remember? I'll never forget, exclaimed Aunt Beatrice as if she knew what Mother was talking about. Wasn't I awful? Perfectly terrible, agreed Mother, wiping her eyes because she was laughing so hard. What happened? Begged Beezus, who could not wait to find out what dreadful thing Aunt Beatrice had done when she was a girl. Mother, tell what happened. It all began when the girls began to take autograph albums to school, began Mother, and went off into another fit of laughter. Oh, Beatrice, you tell it. Of course I wanted an autograph album, too, continued Aunt Beatrice. Beezus nodded because she, too, had an autograph album. Well, your mother, who was always very sensible, saved her allowance and bought a beautiful album with a red cover stamped in gold. How I envied her. As soon as your Aunt Beatrice got her allowance, she always ran straight over to the school store and spent it, added Mother. Yes, and on the most awful junk, agreed Aunt Beatrice. Licorice wisps, pencils that were square instead of round, and no, I don't even know what all. Yes, but what about the autograph album? Asked Beezus. Oh, well, I'm almost ashamed to tell it, said Aunt Beatrice. Oh, go on, urged Mother. It's priceless. Well, when I saw your mother with that brand new autograph album she bought, because she was so sensible, I was annoyed because I wanted one too, and I hadn't saved my allowance. And then she asked me if I'd like to sign my name in it. It was my night to set the table, added Mother. I should have never left her alone with it. But what happened? Beezus could hardly wait to find out. I sat down in the desk and picked up a pen, planning to write on the last page, "By hook or by crook, I'll be the last one in your book," said Aunt Beatrice. Oh, did people write that in those days? Beezus was surprised because she thought this was something very new to write in an autograph album. But I didn't write it, continued Aunt Beatrice. I just sat there wishing I had an autograph album, and then I took the pen and wrote my name on every single page in the book. Aunt Beatrice, you didn't! Not in Mother's brand new autograph album! Beezus was horrified and delighted at the same time. What a terrible thing to do! She certainly did, said Mother. And she didn't just write plain Beatrice Haswell either. She wrote Beatrice Ann Haswell, Miss B. Haswell, B.A. Haswell, Esquire, and everything she could think of. When she couldn't think of any more ways to write her name, she started all over again. Oh, Aunt Beatrice, how perfectly awful! Exclaimed Beezus with a touch of admiration in her voice. Yes, wasn't it? Said Aunt Beatrice. I don't know what came over me. And what did Mother do? Inquired Beezus, eager for the whole story. We had a dreadful quarrel and I got spanked, said Aunt Beatrice. Your mother didn't love me one little bit for a long, long time. And I wouldn't admit it, but I felt terrible because I'd spoiled her autograph album. Fortunately, Christmas came along about that time and we were both given albums, and that put an end to the whole thing. Why, thought Beezus, Aunt Beatrice used to be every bit as awful as Ramona. And yet look how nice she is now. Beezus could scarcely believe it. And now Mother and Aunt Beatrice, who'd quarreled when they were girls, loved each other and thought the things they'd done were funny. They actually laughed about it. Well, maybe when she was grown up she would think it was funny that Ramona put eggshells in one birthday cake and baked her rubber doll into another. Maybe she wouldn't think Ramona was so exasperating after all. Maybe that's just the way things were with sisters. A lovely feeling of relief came over Beezus. What if she didn't love Ramona all the time? It didn't matter at all. She really was just like any other sister. Mother, whispered Beezus, happier than she'd felt in a long time. I hope Ramona comes back before we have any birthday cake. Don't worry, said Mother, smiling. I'm sure she wouldn't miss it for anything. And sure enough, in a few minutes Ramona appeared from the bedroom and took her place at the table. I can behave myself, she said. It's about time, observed Father. Beezus watched Ramona eating her cold mashed potatoes and jelly and thought about how much easier things would be now that she could look at her sister when she was exasperated and think, "Ha ha, Ramona, this is one of those times where I don't have to love you." Girls with birthdays don't have to help clear the table, said Mother, beginning to carry out the dishes. Beezus waited expectantly for the most important moment of the day. She heard her mother take the cake out of its box and strike a match to light the candles. Oh, she breathed happily when Mother appeared in the doorway with the cake in her hands. It was the most beautiful cake she ever had seen, pink with a wreath of white roses made of icing and 10 pink candles that threw a soft glowing light on Mother's face. Happy birthday to you, sang Mother and Father and Aunt Beatrice and Ramona. Happy birthday, dear Beezus. Happy birthday to you. Make a wish, said Father. Beezus paused for a moment. Then she closed her eyes and thought, I wish all my birthdays would turn out as wonderful as this one finally did. She opened her eyes and blew as hard as she could. Your wish is granted, cried Aunt Beatrice, smiling across the 10 smoking candles. Happy birthday, dear Beezus. Happy birthday to you. sang Ramona at the top of her voice. "All right, Ramona," said Mother with a touch of exasperation in her voice. "Once is enough." But at that moment, Beezus did not think her little sister was exasperating at all.